In the sightings video, it appears that some of the scratches appear slowly, and then they kind of turn red in some of the cases in the sightings videos, and they started to bleed. Did they all start out this way, or?
Not, some of them would just be there. It's hard to explain.
It's like they look away, and then I look back, and he's bleeding, or somebody else notices it.
I'd be talking like I'm sitting here talking to you now. All of a sudden, they would just show up, and they interviewers or whatever be like, "Holy cow!"
Yeah,
right,
like right in front of you. Yeah.
There was the one time sightings was up, and I think we sat there for like 11 hours. I'd have my shirt off and all that, and that investigator was like this. And if I got up to use the bathroom, I was checked every time I came back. And he was getting so frustrated because he'd be sitting there, he's just screaming. He's like, "There's another one. I'm sitting right here."
And he was just, I feel.
Yeah, that is a really interesting video.
Yeah.
I liked watching that because it was very interesting.
It was good.
It was very intense. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it was.
I mean, it's obviously old and dated now, and it's funny to kind of watch, but
like
there's definitely some evidence there.
Well, I think it went a long way for viewers that were watching, thinking, because that was like their 7th or 8th episode or something. And for the viewers that were watching, because it was one of their biggest running features or whatever. So people were really tuning in because they had heard about it or whatnot. And so I think as much as that drew people in, they got to see, that people were really trying to set it up to make sure it wasn't something, we were messing with
Right.
or, goofing off or...
Right.
And honestly, we have had a lot of good reception on our website. I've got a chunk in our forums for skeptics.
Mm-hmm.
There's
you're gonna have
a lot of it.
Nobody's really posted in there. So I think it speaks volumes for, what has gotten
It is
out
a
there
very
and what
informative
people
website.
have seen. So.
There was an incident, Tony, where you were either influenced by a demon or whatever you want to call it, where you wanted to do harm to them.
Yeah, that was, I think, our biggest, mine for finally getting out, because it was to the point where I was having, every time I was in the house, and it would last almost all day times, all I could think about was hurting her. And to the point of where I had actually almost kind of planned on killing her one day when she came home from work. I had a knife out. I was going to slit her throat, and it got to the point when she'd walk past me in a room, all I felt was rage. I just felt like I just wanted to hurt her. I was almost, it was weird because I was jealous of her. Almost like a woman would be jealous
Right.
of another woman. It was that bad. And I would try to explain that to her, and for some reason she just couldn't. She was so unlike herself, she just kind of blew it off. And it was just so frustrating. And finally, I don't know, grace of God, I guess, I don't know, it just kicked into her that...
Do you think it could be jealousy from the other lady?
I wondered
the other
that.
apparition? you
Well,
were seeing?
I'm thinking too, either it was a negative woman or a spirit presenting as a negative woman. But yes, in some form jealousy, because I remember him sitting up from the couch he was sleeping, and he basically sat straight up and he looked at me with his eyes open and said, "He's mine." And then pretty much laid back down the same way. Almost mechanical-like, and the voice was his, but there was something that just wasn't quite right.
Right.
And I can remember just thinking he must be dreaming, about his son. The baby was 6 months old or 4 months old or something like that. I don't remember. And I just so easily blew it off. But in hindsight, and it was maybe 10 months later or something, when I was really kind of putting things together, and I was kind of more reclaiming who I really am and asking questions and wanting, answers and stuff like that.
Right.
And I don't know what gave me the strength to do that or what released or whatever. But I got to thinking that that should have been a red flag of at least a partial possession.
That's where I think the playing us against each other. And I've always thought that in this type of haunting, for me, everything felt bad. And I felt like it wanted to destroy everything I loved. And what a better way than to kill the person I love the most, hurt my family. It would just wreck my life. I mean, you go to prison, you go all that. So that's almost what it felt like it was wanting to do, was just to ruin everything. And
do you remember these events? Do you feel like you were in a trance, or
that's the hard part, is because I remember some things. I remember when it first started progressing, I can remember having the thoughts of, and then it just got to where I don't remember because I didn't care. It was just a rage when I was in the house. Cameras never caught all the arguing and the fighting that we were doing at the time.
Right.
I shouldn't go off until you heard alone.
Talking about killing the mood.
Totally.
But yeah, there's a lot that I don't remember, and it's a real guilty feeling. I actually, after we moved out, and it was years later, it was almost like and I don't want to compare it to a soldier going to war and doing battle, but it was like living with a sniper every day, because you didn't know what to expect. I didn't know and then to leave that and go to where things are somewhat normal, you're missing something. It was hard to live with, and I had a lot of guilt because I knew at one time that I wanted to hurt her, and that bothered me. So I went to counseling for a while to try to...
I didn't know that until several years after we moved out of the house. I didn't know that he had gone through that.
It was just something well, at the time, I didn't... Well, that, and I wasn't really aware as much as I was after we moved out that it had gotten that serious. But I'm just so glad we moved out, because I wouldn't be here today, I know that, and she probably wouldn't either.
Well, we're very glad you're both here.
Yeah, you are too.
I'm definitely glad that worked out, my goodness. Obviously, the Sallie House is very popular now. Lots of investigative groups want to go there and do investigations, and very popular. We understand that you guys like to know when a group's going to be there, when people are going to investigate, because sometimes you guys are still affected by whatever energy might have been there, or whatever you want to call it. You guys have to spiritually prepare yourselves. Is that true, or is it very...
Yeah, I kind of learned the hard way that I seriously need to spiritually block to keep that house from affecting me.
Especially when there's groups in there that want to taunt or challenge what's there.
It has reached out to us, and I think it was probably about 11 months after we first moved out that I had my first experience with her brother had come to visit, and we were sitting around the table, and everything's going good. We're all talking and having dinner, and all of a sudden I felt that cold, and I used to feel just a bone-chilling cold shoot through me, and it seemed like whenever that happened, I'd have a scratch. And I didn't want to say anything in front of my brother because I wasn't sure. First time I'd met him.
It was when Mike and Dana came up just after New Year's.
So I kind of pulled her into, I got up, excused myself, and I got up and I kind of motioned for her to come here, and I said, I think it's happening again. I said, I've got that cold, it just won't leave.
We had 11 months of pretty well quiet.
And sure enough, I ended up with what?
You were scratched all up here. And
scratches started showing
up on my arm. I gave him a stick of sage, and I said, you go upstairs and you demand that little shit leave you alone. Tell her with the vengeance of God, you are not wanted here.
But that was really terrifying for me, because up until that point, I had no idea that a haunting could follow you. I thought a haunted house was a haunted house once you left you or did.
Well, and we've been brought up with the belief that, somebody died in the house, they're going to haunt that house, or they have unfinished business and that's why they're there. And
Right.
that's so very untrue. You can run into a spirit walking by, you know, the old woman in aisle 2.
Right.
You know, and that spirit can kind of look at you and say, oh, you kind of look interesting, and go home with you and hang out with you for a couple days.
Right.
Mhm.
The thing is, we don't know.
We don't.
don't.
It's a whole unseen world that we don't see.
Right.
And we kind of caught that when groups would come up, especially ones that were real, we'd find out later from somebody that might have been over there, or word of mouth, that they were very challenging and daring it, and that
And we're like, that's why we had activity at the
if we
house.
started putting 2 and 2 together, I would end up with scratches at home. It got so severe one
Spontaneous
time,
weird
a
fires.
knife flew from our kitchen a good
Oh.
30 foot, maybe even more.
Yeah.
And when I was sitting in a
It was-
recliner, and it went right across and cut my shirt.
Blade.
And just, you know, a real superficial
Very, yeah.
cut on my chest, and hit the wall.
Well, hit the curtain, because that's what I saw move, was the curtain.
Right.
I'm like, what's over there?
And we couldn't figure out, you know, is this thing just detached? But we'd find out later that there had been a group over there that was really testing the limits. And
So it's
so,
obviously very important to stay grounded in your faith when you're
Mhm.
investigating or when you're dealing with this kind of stuff.
A lot of groups don't
That's-
think faith has a place, but
No,
from our point of view, it most certainly does. It's what keeps us safe.
it is.
Yeah.
You have to have something.
mhm.
And when you're dealing with the spiritual world, it's very good to be grounded on the good side of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah,
'Cause things can really affect you demonically and whatnot.
totally.